All right, Hillary Allen, welcome back to the Single Track Podcast.
Thanks for having me again. I know we've chatted a lot this year.
I was going to say, as I was putting the questions together for this interview, I realized this is our third time chatting this calendar year. We caught up at the beginning of January with your move to Brooks, then before Speed Goat, and here we are in November getting ready for Cape Town. And I do love to catch up when we have these multi-thread conversations. And I'm curious, given that we've spoken a couple times over the past 12 months as a pro athlete, I'm curious, are you someone that likes to think in terms of year to year seasons and to look back at the previous 12 months to assess whether you've hit your goals and did what you wanted to do, all that kind of stuff? I'm curious as a pro, what your thoughts are there.
Yeah. So, I'm honored to, that we've chatted a lot throughout the season. It's nice to kind of have different check-ins. Honestly, as I prepare for Ultra Trail Cape Town, this wasn't a race that was kind of on my calendar. I actually had left the second half of my season kind of open. So, honestly, I think it is smart to kind of plan a race calendar based off of the seasons, right, and the lotteries. But I'm always someone who kind of thinks bigger picture. And my history is a bit different just because I've had some pretty significant setbacks, and I've always pictured myself, even when I first got into the sport, 7 years ago, that I was going to be a 100-miler because I knew I had the endurance, that kind of caters to my training style, the races that I like. But there were some pretty big hiccups along the way that kind of prevented me from pursuing that goal kind of on the timeline that I had kind of projected myself to do. And so I like to think of it in bigger chunks. What are some races that I'm going to do this year that could help me prepare for a bigger goal? To be honest, I've always thought of Hard Rock as a bucket list race. And so UTMB and TDS were some races that we're going to have that help me to get there. But of course that's I focus on a year at a time, of a season at a time, what I can accomplish, and then build from there. But yeah, I'm happy that I'm kind of at this point in my career that I can finally do 100-mile races, because like I said, it's something that I've always thought of, even 7 years ago, kind of had a 3-4 year plan. And so now I'm kind of, the races that I'm doing this year and have done this year are kind of setting me up for kind of that 3-4 year plan, even though I'm kind of tackling it one season at a time. Yeah.
I was going to say, if you think about it in terms of themes for 2022, has this year been the year where you've fully committed to the 100-mile mountain ultra distance, or did that begin a couple of years back, even after the injury?
I think it kind of started with TDS. That was kind of it was just kind of a bonus. It ended up being the longer distance, and but then I had some setbacks after that, broke my foot, and then having the huge shift in my, just running career with that. And then that basically causing, a jump to my current team with Brooks, that, yeah, I don't know, a theme, I guess, for sure. I think it maybe started in 2019. It had a little bit of an unfortunate circumstance, but then now I feel I'm kind of at this point where I can now focus on it more, just because I have the support from a gear standpoint that actually really works for me. So yeah, I'm definitely fully committed to it. I didn't think that I'd be running 200 milers in this year. So
with Cape Town, I'm curious obviously it's a destination. It's a beautiful place on earth, but what, personally, what drew you to the event? What's your inspiration for racing here?
And I like how you say inspiration, because that is, and maybe this is naive of me, but I am definitely a runner who has to be inspired by the terrain that I'm running on. No offense to Dylan Bowman, I love you dearly, but Gorge Waterfall 100K did not do it for me. I love the Gorge, and if I were to race there again, which I would prefer to go up to go on either side of the Gorge itself. Anyways, but yeah, so I'm just inspired. I was looking at some different races. I had kind of looked at the UTMB Puerto Vallarta. I've raced kind of in South America before. And I was looking at this course, but just, I don't know. I mean, I speak Spanish, so I was kind of inspired by that aspect of like the community. But there's just something about Cape Town. It's always been this pinnacle race where it draws insane competition from all over the world. So that's one plus. And then it's just this insane location rich with history and culture. And it's a place I've never been. It's the furthest place I will ever go. I've ever gone to race. And yeah, I think the combination of that, like the UTMB Mexico race, like looked awesome, but I don't think that it drew as much of a competition as I was really hoping for. And yeah, there's also something, you know, I mean, even though the Ultra Trail Cape Town 100 miler is the inaugural event, still it's been an established event for the 100K for many years. And it's kind of been, you know, a pinnacle stop on the world tour. And I'm still using that term because I still think it's like, you know, it's like Ultra Trail World Tour. It still is kind of one of those pinnacle races. So, I mean, that's all that drew me to it. And then the third part that was just kind of the icing on the cake is just the community. I mean, I just feel so loved and welcomed, even though I haven't even gone to Cape Town yet. It just seems so welcoming, and the community is just so psyched on the race itself. And I think that's another thing. Like, I'm going in blind, and I've never been on the course, and I have, like, you know, volunteers who are going to help me and my crew chief, you know, go around the course and, you know, help me with anything I need there. So it's gonna be awesome.
You said you were going in blind there, and I'm curious with regard to the information/research gathering process. Have you had a chance to speak with people like Courtney DeWalter or Jim Walmsley or Cody Reed, like other Americans that have had success there, about what it might take to have a good day out there?
Yeah, so I've spoken, and I've also spoken to Ryan Sands, just about the course itself and some locals down there. And I've also been using, you know, it's really cool now, like the Ultra Trail Live, like the coverage, particularly last year, I watched the coverage just to kind of get a feel for like the trails itself, like looking at the videos. And then also like dragging like the Google man literally onto the trails to kind of like see, and it seems like there's like quite a bit of variety, especially kind of like down further south where the 100 miler continues to go. But yeah, I've been trying to gather as much information as I can. I mean, it's kind of exciting because the first time I actually ran a race, like quote unquote blind, right? That was kind of back in 2016, 2017, where I've done, you know, about 100K, blind. And but since then, you know, I've always been able to travel a little bit earlier, or I've been in the area and know the course. So yeah, I mean, it's also that unknown, I think, is something that can keep it quite interesting and exciting for the 100K. From everything that I've gathered, it's a race that has everything. It's like steep mountain, technical, beach running, like smooth single track, jungle, roots, got a bit of everything.
I know you're coming off Ultra Trail du Mont Blanc back in late August, and so I'm curious, what have the last 2-ish months looked like from a training standpoint? And I guess, how do you feel heading into this race compared to your pre-race feels before other events this year?
I think the main feeling that I'm having is I'm feeling just immensely more confident. I mean, UTMB for me didn't, you know, go according to plan. But, you know, it was a huge learning experience. I have yet another lesson in resilience. And I think it was a very important race for me to finish, not only mentally, but to show like physically that I feel like I'm made for these types of races. So there's that, but then also physically, like recovery wise, it actually was very smooth. I mean, after UTMB, I, you know, maybe like sat 3 days on the couch and didn't want to move. And then I like did like a hike around the Grand Combon in Switzerland and Italy. And like my body actually bounced back fairly quickly when I came back to the States. Mentally, it was a bit, you know, it was hard. I had to kind of like, you know, work through it, figure out the main takeaways. But honestly, like October in the fall in Colorado is one of my favorite times to train. And I literally the first week I got back into Colorado, I did super longs, which was I ride my bike from Boulder to Longs Peak, do the peak, and then come back. And then the next day I did Pawnee Buchanan. It's like a 27-mile loop in the Indian Peaks outside of Boulder. Like I was just feeling so good kind of once I got my mental mojo back, and I was just having so much fun with like my training friends, and they were kind of preparing for fall races. I was kind of like being the little devil's advocate and being like, you want to come play with me in the mountains? Let's go do this cool run. And so I got in actually some pretty good like speed workouts and some really cool long mountain days and some like new to me loops in kind of my home mountains, which is like the best of both worlds, combining cycling and running. And honestly, I was feeling so good. I think that the hardest part for me now is that it's really cold. Actually, we have some fresh snow here today, and I leave to go to Europe, and I hear it's quite hot in Cape Town. So that's been the hardest. Like the last 2 weeks have probably been the hardest mentally and physically, just because I've had to kind of shift and train in a little bit of snow, which is always not so good for like my ankles and feet. So, there's maybe like some little niggles, but I'm hoping that, like with some, as the training comes down, it's fine. But, on the upside, snow running is pretty specific for some beach running that I know is in my future. So
yes. That's cool. I mean, it's great to hear that confidence is the theme heading in. Mm-hmm. And I love how and I think you talked about this in your episode with Cap Bradley, that just released, about embracing sort of the whole mountain athlete mm-hmm. lifestyle with the bike, which I think is super cool.
Yeah.
Looking ahead at this race, it looks like a pretty stacked field. You included, I was trying to think about this before the interview. What is your racing style? Like when you come into a race in good fitness, in a good mindset, feeling competitive, is there a way you like to take the race out? Like, do you like to be right in that lead pack, or what's your mindset there, your philosophy?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, honestly, with these races, I mean, I think I want to put myself in a good position, right? It's like, I think with that theme of confidence, knowing that I'm fit enough, knowing that, that I can be in contention. Right. And so it's putting myself in that contention early on without burning too many candlesticks, so to speak. Like playing to my strengths, and, not completely blowing myself up on, flatter, faster things when I know that my strength is more like the technical and climbing and these kinds of things, but also not, the knowing that I also do have leg speed and not, not setting myself up for creating too big of a gap. Right. So I think that's important. I mean, also, and then in these races, it's like really the theme of it for me is I want to have fun, but I want to, make sure that I'm taking care of myself. Right. I think that's the biggest theme of like certain times, like, you might be leading or, behind, but as long as I'm taking care of like what I need in the immediate future, then I know that, I can still do well throughout the race. I mean, that's like also with like what UTMB proved is that shit literally hit the fan, and like, I was literally spent the first half of the race, like pooing in the forest. Sorry, Chamonix. But, it's cool to see like what I could actually come back from and feel like I could finish strong. And so knowing that even if there are little like down periods, like still putting yourself in position, you can be right there. Right. Because typically I think this is something that I've worked on before. I'm not necessarily a fast starter, but I'm like a consistent one. And so I'm not one to start out like a bat out of hell and then like hold on for dear life. I'm more of like start in a good position and try not to slow down, or catch. I like to catch people and hunt people down. But I've tried to work on the other aspect of like being more confident so that I can put myself in a good position and maybe start a little bit faster than I normally would, and knowing that I can still maintain that for, a pretty long duration. Last
question I have for you, as a Brooks athlete, what shoes are you wearing on race day?
Ooh, My favorite question now. I'm doing the Caldera 7. So sorry, everyone. The Caldera 6 just launched, and they are sick shoes, but you just wait till the Caldera 7's on the market. So I actually got to race. I got to try out these prototypes in Chamonix. Actually, this is the shoe that I raced Mont Blanc in, and we're kind of doing a little bit of some modifications to them. But yeah, those are it. Those are the shoes I'm wearing.
Super cool. Well, Hillary, always a pleasure to chat. We are looking forward to following your race in Cape Town in a couple days. And yeah, just thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks, Ben.